Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It sounds sad, our final interview for this amazing event. Thank you so much, Kristina, for joining us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's sneaking up pretty fast. I realized this
Mhm.
past week, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 2 months, and it seems
Uh-huh.
like no time.
It's
Like,
gonna be here
seems
before we know it.
I know.
Kinda like Christmas, that came and went, like, where what?
You know it was here, but where did it go?
Exactly.
Hello, yes, from Altnew's hometown of Syracuse. Hello, Audrey. Hello, everyone, as you're coming in. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions for Kristina, just pop them into the chat. Kristina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so, I am Werner Design on YouTube or Star of May at Instagram, and I've been a card maker for, oh my gosh, we'll just say over 15 years. We're
Yeah.
not gonna put an exact number on it.
No.
Over 15 years. I started out as excuse me, as a product designer, and then, and my short airplane answer is that I'm an online art teacher, and then if people ask for further, like, specifics, then I say, "Well, I'm an illustrator, I design products for the scrapbooking and card making industry, and then I teach people how to use it online." So that's basically what I do, and I'm happy to be back for the March Mindfulness retreat. It's gonna be fun.
And we're so excited to have you. And yes, there's an amazing podcast as well with Kristina about how her career almost didn't happen. Like
Mhm.
it's a very scary story, but it's a good story. It had a wonderful outcome because we do have Kristina in our industry designing beautiful projects and beautiful products as well. So make sure to listen to that podcast as well to hear more about Kristina. You've been with us before. What's exciting about coming back?
I think the format is really unique. I don't know of any other companies that do it quite like this, where the retreats are live and participants are on Zoom, and they can have their camera on if they want, or they can turn it off. It's totally up to you, and it's just really fun to see everyone kind of in their own spaces, in their own homes, and crafting right along with us. It's really fun.
It is, and we have some that just like to watch and chat too, and
Mhm.
that's great too. It's just but
I
it
love
is
the ones where you see them in their house and they're just like popcorn. They're not even pretending to craft. They're just full on voyeuring.
they're living it up. They're like,
Uh-huh.
but it like you said, it's so cool to see people's spaces because 'cause you're like, "Oh, what a great idea." Like when you see that
Mhm.
behind them or whatever. So it is
Mhm.
exciting. Now, do you snack when you craft?
Sometimes right at the beginning, I might like grab a little something before I go to my craft room, but it doesn't stay for very long. I'll eat it right away and then I've got my water and I'll drink some water. But generally I'm a neat freak with my hands because I do a lot of clean and simple cards, like white card bases, and it will pick up anything under the sun that's on your hands. So for the most part, I keep my hands super, super clean so I don't snack or eat while I'm crafting.
And many times you don't see it until your project's, like, done and you're
Oh,
about to
yeah.
either put it in an envelope or take a picture, and you're like, "Oh, how did that get on there?"
Uh-huh.
So
You're like, "Oh, that's an opportunity for a sequin." Just put that right there.
Thank goodness sequins go into clean and simple cards as well,
Yeah.
because, if you're doing more mixed media cards, you can really layer up to cover any mistakes like that.
It can cover a multitude of sins.
Absolutely. Now we haven't gotten the kit in your hands just yet, but you've seen images. What
Mhm.
are you dying to use from this kit?
Well, gosh, there's always a really good mix of products. So I really like that if you're unfamiliar with all the different types of things that Altenew offers, doing like getting a kit like this is a really great introduction to get a rounded out kind of assortment of different things. So I really like that aspect about it. There's a really good embossing folder this time, and some really fun elements that I think are going to be really, really cute to use all together. There's always really good greetings, good stencil set. Yeah.
Now, do you have an image of what you're kind of leaning towards? Or are you going to really get it in your hands and before you
I think I'm gonna wait until I see it all together. Um, I've only really seen the actual like stamps and stencil dice type stuff, and a
yeah.
lot of times Altenew kind of includes some other little goodies in the box too. So I want to try to incorporate those. So I think I'm just gonna wait and see. I'm gonna wait and see what's in there.
It'll be a fun day. It's always a fun day to get that either floral or brown box with the floral
Mhm.
tape on it, and there's beautifulness inside and just ready to go.
Absolutely.
So you are a perfect example of somebody that your hobby became your profession, your job.
Mhm.
So how do you stay mindful in doing the many things, because you are everywhere in the many things that you do? How do you stay mindful?
Well, I guess you first have to ask yourself, like, what does mindful mean to you? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
I think for me, being mindful is probably just like not getting caught up in the stressful day to day type of stuff. So, over the Christmas and New Year's holidays, I was doing a lot of sewing randomly, like not even my usual paper crafting hobby. And just doing things with my hands is a really good way to kind of refocus. I think it can be really distracting if you've got a lot of stuff going on in your head that you can't really, a lot of people talk about it like it's noise in my head and I can't really like stop it. But when you are doing something that requires your complete attention, um, I think that it's almost meditative in a way, and it makes you clear your mind of everything so you can focus on that one task. So, coloring is like that for me because I really am focusing on what I'm doing as I'm coloring. Coloring's like that. Sewing is a little bit like that too. Well, sort of. I like to like listen to something like a podcast or a documentary or something on in the background, but something that's not going to need my full attention because I'm focusing on the task that I'm doing with my hands. So, yeah, but I mean, mindfulness, it really for me, it goes back to like meditation type stuff. And I remember the first time that I tried to meditate. This was a few years ago. One of my friends was like, "You really should meditate. I think it would help you." And so I got the Calm app, and I was just doing a little trial run with it. I didn't pay for it at the time, and I was so stressed out that day, and I did a little. I think it was 7 minutes. It wasn't very long, and then at the end of it, I was like, "Oh, I can breathe." And then I went back to what I was doing, and I was more productive. So
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, take from it what you will. I think it's just a good way to give your brain a little bit of a break.
And it's nice now we do have lots of ways that
Mhm,
I think technology can be part of the reason we need mindfulness, but like you just mentioned, there are ways as well that technology can help with
mhm,
mindfulness. And I think it's something too, as well, that a lot of folks, they've heard the word, but they don't really know kind of what that entails, which
mhm.
is great that there are so many resources now to help out with that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, do you also embrace like yoga and other kind of meditative?
Um, Gosh, I don't do yoga. I do Pilates. I go to a Pilates studio near my home, and they're classes, and so they're like telling you what to do, but you have to be focusing on it. You can't, I mean, you might injure yourself if you don't stay completely focused. So in that way, I find it very meditative, and it's also a very gentle form of exercise. So I don't even consider it really like working out. Like I'm training for a half marathon right now, and I'm supposed to have a rest day 2 times a week. And that's when I go and do Pilates on those rest days, because to me, it's almost more just stretching and things like that. But I mean, there are people who make Pilates really, really tough and get their heart rate going, and they can really, but for me, it's just like, let's just be slow, let's relax, that type of thing. I have done yoga in the past, and I think I mentioned it during the mindfulness retreat last year. But I find restorative yoga to be a really great way to do yoga, especially if I am not flexible. I cannot, I mean, the downward dog position, most people know what that is. You're basically just like, you know, hands on the ground, feet on the ground, and then your rear end's kind of straight up to the ceiling. I can't do it. I have no like flexibility on the back of my legs, so I can't do it. But restorative yoga is one of those ones where it's like it uses a lot of yoga blocks and pillows and things like that. So it's more supportive.
Yeah.
So you're not having to hold yourself up in these positions. Most of the time they want you in a position where you're going to be resting,
Yes.
and you can just really kind of stretch into it and relax, and you'll feel your body start to relax more the more you're in that same position. In fact, it's really interesting because I did this online class with this guy. It was all about like supporting your back and becoming more flexible because I have some back issues. And he would only teach 3 poses every class,
Yeah.
and you'd hold every pose for 5 to 7 minutes. And I found it really beneficial to, just get into one stretch and stay there, because you realize that once you're just sitting in that stretch, there comes a point where your body's just like, okay, fine, I'll stretch more. It finally just gives in, and you can actually get more out of that particular position that you're in. So I don't know, it's really interesting. I find it to be beneficial. I really like it.
And I was just thinking, there is so much that when we're crafters, we are hunched over if we have a
Mhm,
standing station, or we're standing a lot, or in a chair in weird positions sometimes because we got to get that embellishment in just the right place, or we got to see,
mhm,
is the stamp lined up perfectly, or so it's good to have those restorative mindfulness kind of things that not only heal kind of our soul and our brain,
mhm,
as well as help us physically
mhm.
withstand the long and strange positions sometimes we can be in, to see
Oh,
if
yeah.
stuff is lined up correctly.
Have you
And also,
seen those glasses that are like you wear them and there's like a mirror on them, so then you can be facing forward, but it shows what's on your lap? I'm
yes,
like, sometimes I wish I had those for crafting. I'd just be, like, looking straight forward, and I'm, like, crafting down below, because that little hunched back thing, that's true.
it is. It's a thing, and it's
Mhm.
when you stand up, you're like, whoa, like, and you can feel it when you stand up.
Uh-huh,
And
for
congrats on
sure.
the half marathon training.
Well, I mean, I was gonna try to jog it, but then I thought that's not gonna happen. So now I'm just walking it. And then this
Wonderful.
last week I had a little blip where my foot was starting to bug me. So I'm like, okay, let's rest the
Yep.
foot for a bit. So little bump, but that's okay. We'll get back to it. It's
It's
okay.
okay. There's lots of little bumps. It's
Uh-huh.
okay.
Mhm.
But congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I read today that just signing up for one is winning.
I
So
think so. I think, yeah, committing to that and the training that you're going
mhm,
through and everything. Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
What is your favorite activity when you're feeling stressed? What do you find most calming, soothing, like crafting wise?
Crafting wise, that's a good question. Watercolor is always really well, you know what? I have to take it back, because if I watercolor, my mind is already going, and I want something that's little almost mindless. Seems
Yep.
weird to say that now that we're talking about being mindful, but like
Yes.
mindless. I'll swatch colors.
Yep.
Have you ever seen one of those like watercolor charts where you've got all the colors on the top going horizontal, and then you've got all the colors going down vertical, and then you mix them in a grid?
Yes, you make those. I've seen those
Yeah,
on your
yeah, I
channel.
didn't know if you've seen it or not.
Yeah,
Those are
yes.
totally fun to do if you just don't want to, like, be thinking about a project. Those are really great, especially if you have a watercolor palette that maybe only has, like, 5 to 8 colors. Like, the Altenew Artistry tube paints,
Yep.
it only has a few colors. You don't have this huge plethora of color. You don't really need them, actually, because when you do one of these charts, you can really see the full spectrum of how you can mix the colors with each other. So I find those to be really therapeutic and relaxing because I just draw a grid and then I just start painting in the squares. I think that can be really great. Or even like swatching ink pads, because so many of the inks, I have lots of inks in my craft room,
Yep.
and I know I don't use many of them because I just don't know what they look like once they're out
Yep.
on cardstock. So swatching is really great for that too.
And usually you're in a situation where you need to know, like if you're grabbing an
Mhm.
ink, you have to know what you're going to get. You can't play at the
Yeah.
point when you need that color.
Mhm.
But I also love how you said mindless to be mindful, because sometimes
Uh-huh.
you need to be. I
Yeah.
think that's like a catchphrase because you do
Mhm.
have to be. You have to shut it down just to kind of go into yourself and just be in the moment
For
and, you
sure.
know, whatever you're processing at that moment. So,
And I know, like, I've heard from a lot of, like, crafty friends that, they can get busy and they can get stressed with other things in their life, and they haven't been able to, touch their crafting supplies in a long time. And they start to feel a little bit of that guilt. They're like, oh, I've spent so much time and money investing into these supplies, and I haven't been giving them the attention that it deserves because I just don't have the mental headspace to think about it at the moment. And that's when I really encourage them, like, don't make anything at all. Just go into your craft room or break out those supplies in your stash and maybe just organize them. Like, just to be touching and feeling them and doing something with them, maybe clean out your stash just a little bit at a time, like nothing overwhelming. Or, like I mentioned, do swatching, something like that. I find that if I'm stressed or I don't feel really inspired at the moment, so I don't really feel like I should be creating or I can't create at the moment, just like getting those supplies in my hands, not even in a creative capacity, but just in like organizing or swatching or something like that. I find that just like touching and feeling them naturally makes me want to start to be creative. It makes me want to do that. And it brings back a little bit more of that motivation. So sometimes when people ask me, like, hey, what do you do when you don't have any inspiration, or you want to create, but you don't have any ideas or whatever, I just like to just be in my craft room. And if you don't have a craft room, maybe just break out those supplies and just be with them for a minute. I know that sounds kind of like woo woo, kind of hokey, but
no.
just like being with the supplies, I think really helps.
And I think too, loving the space that you have, whether it's a picture of a rainbow or it's a picture of your
Mhm,
family or your dog or your cat, whatever it is, I think really making your space so that in those days when it's a struggle to create, you just want to create, being in a
mhm,
place that makes you feel comforted and happy is wonderful as well to help. But that's the time. I think that's the perfect as well. Why not organize in those times? Because
mhm,
you don't wanna do it when you have, like, ideas flowing and you're in the
mhm.
zone and you're like, "Oh, no, I just have 20 inks I haven't swatched and I don't." You don't wanna stop to do that. You wanna keep
No,
creating and making pretty things. So
for sure. Someone in the chat was just asking about that chart. I'm gonna find the
oh,
video and then I can give you the title.
yes. Yes. That chart, watching you make that was amazing, and I think the amazing thing about this chart as well is that I imagine as you're going through it, you kinda know what you're gonna get, but you get some surprises a little bit too with the colors where you're like, "Oh, wow, I have to make this again so many times because it's so pretty," and it's just a mindful activity that you surprise yourself with, and how many surprises do we get as adults? So, it's very exciting.
Okay, so that chart or the video showing that chart is from 3 years ago. If you search on YouTube for endless colors from only 12 watercolor paints, or just put in capsule paper crafting, that will probably come up. In fact, I have this thing called capsule paper crafting. It's kind of a weird concept, but if you have you ever heard of like a capsule wardrobe?
Yep.
It's that same concept where like with the capsule wardrobe, maybe you have like a, you know, 5 pairs of pants, 5 t-shirts, you know, 3 pairs of shoes. But then within just those items, you can mix and match and make, you know, so many endless outfits out of just those things. So it's that kind of concept. So, but it's, you know, applied to crafting supplies. So what I did was I made kind of like a suggested, oh, this is funny. I have it right in front of me. It's this little list, but it's got stuff like, the main list of kind of tools and supplies you need. And then you've got like seasonal items that you can swap in and out. Anyway, the reason I mention that is because for my capsule paper crafting list, I have a watercolor set on there. And when I first tried out this whole concept, I wanted to like really get to know that watercolor set. And so I made one of these color mixing charts. And I mean, I used that same watercolor set for a long time over. It's not, it's like I couldn't put it away because I just learned what colors it could create so much. And I loved it. I don't think I use it. Yeah, I don't use it anymore because I think it's been retired. It's not for sale anymore. But if you're ever trying to really get into watercolor painting, I really suggest doing this with your watercolor set because the watercolor set that you know is the one that you will use.
Yeah.
So if you know what colors can be combined, if you know like the lights and darks and really kind of, you know, getting to know all the paints outside of a project, I think, I mean, it'll only benefit you in the long run.
And I think that's a good tip as well, is you don't wanna get to know something as you're sitting down to do a project.
Mhm.
You don't wanna, "Oh, let me just I have this card that's due tomorrow, and let me just take out this watercolor set I've never used before, and I'm gonna make a beautiful project," because that can be very stressful, not
Mhm.
knowing your supply. But I love the capsule idea because it's and these kits are kinda like little capsules, essentially,
Oh, yeah.
um, where you just you're not overwhelmed because we
Mhm.
all have in our space stuff, you know? And so it's nice to have that kind of pared down, really like versatile supplies that will take you all the way through, and really get to know it and see what you can push out of just those few supplies.
Totally. I think, especially if you've been crafting for any amount of time, you most likely have items in your stash that haven't gotten enough love, you know, that you haven't been able to break out. So it's a great way to focus on those items and really get a lot of good use out of them. And the same thing could be applied to these kits. You know, you get a kit for a retreat. Altenew has a number of retreats throughout the year. So maybe you get one of these kits. You're going to make quite a few things like at the event itself, but maybe keep that kit out on your desk or on your table for another 2 weeks and just see what else you can create with it because you're really going to get, you know, not only the most bang for your buck, but I think it's really going to help you feel accomplished and like you've really gotten its worth, you know, when you just do it that way. I think it's a great idea.
And there's so much inspiration too between just the classes and like things instructors will mention kind of in passing as they're teaching or
Mhm.
in the Facebook group. I mean, there is so much inspiration with this core kit as well, which is just absolutely amazing. So it's funny that you mentioned 5 things. So, what 5 things would you put in a crafty to go bag?
Oh, God. Well, can I reference my
You
list here?
can. Yes, yes, you've been conducting outside research. You absolutely can use
Okay,
this.
all right, yeah, because I found these 2. I was cleaning my craft room, and I had been, like, adding things to it. I don't know if you can see there's, like, handwritten things. So I've been modifying this list over the years. I think the first time I did it was 2020. Yeah, it was 2020, February of 2020, so it's been
Wow.
4 years.
Wow.
Um, okay, so I actually have 5 categories, so this is
Oh,
great.
wow. Lots of
So the
5s.
first category is cardstock or paper.
Yep.
So for that, I would probably do just a nice white cardstock because most of the time you can do nearly every technique on just some nice smooth white cardstock. Inks, I think I'd probably just do a black waterproof ink maybe
Yep.
because then I can do some coloring things on top. For a coloring medium, how about some colored pencils? I'll do some colored
Ooh.
pencils. Adhesive, I'll do a liquid glue. I do love a good tape runner, don't get me wrong,
Yes.
but I think I do a liquid glue because a liquid glue can do a lot of the things that a tape runner can do also, but a
Yeah.
tape runner cannot do all the things that a liquid glue can do. So,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah, so I'd probably do a liquid glue. And then I just got tools listed, and this is the longest list. So I've got to really narrow it down. Um, oh gosh. I haven't even gotten into stamps yet. This is the problem. Um, I would probably pick a stamping platform. So something, like the stamp wheel or just something that's going to help me get my stamps, you know, onto the paper just right. But those,
Teresa's
yeah.
Therese
But,
did good last night. She's like, I will take stamped images, which eliminated her ink, her paper, everything.
oh,
She's just
oh
taking the stamped
wow.
images. And I'm like, genius. That's
So
you
she's
guys.
prepped for this. She's actually
Yes.
had some time to prep. Okay,
She's
that's smart.
prepped for the go bag. Yes. Oh,
That's
good.
smart.
Rosie mentioned, she said, easiest thing, watercolors, pre-stamped watercolor
Mhm.
paper, brushes, uh, hardboard, or a clipboard and a microfiber cloth. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good to-go bag too.
Yes. I really should have just thought like, hey, when I'm going to a crafting retreat, what do I take? Because when I go to a crafting retreat, I don't pack up everything in the kitchen sink because I know myself, I'm probably going to be talking to people the whole time. So, I'll bring like a project kit, like I'll build myself a little project kit. If it's right before the holidays, I might create like a really simple holiday card and then just put everything for that card in a little bag. And then I'll just make multiples of that card. So I'll do that quite a bit too. But like,
That's
I mean,
great.
to Rosie's point, like that's a really great like little to-go bag, with watercolor stuff ready to go. Or if you just like to color, maybe it's just some stamped images and then you've got your alcohol markers. Yeah,
Or we have, Altoon has a pre-printed both watercolor and artist marker book, so you could
that's
put
true.
that in there, you don't have to worry. And Rosie, you could actually make it 5 still if we can give you water. Water doesn't count. So if you put water on the back of your watercolor paper and stick it to your board, you're good to go. You're still at 5, Rosie.
You don't need tape.
Right, tape. No, it's nice to have, but you don't need to have tape. So we'll help you stick to your 5 there. So if you guys, other folks have ones that you have in your mind, let us know. We love to hear those as well. And I mean, yeah, I think that's one of the great things about in-person events is that you do get to go chat, but your work doesn't get done.
That's true.
Usually. So, because the chat, as you can imagine, I'm a chatter. And so, but these are great because you get to kind of chat through the chat in the Zoom, but you also really, you're in your space. You don't have to pack anything. I know some folks will put stuff in bins or get it ready, kind of set up. But it's all in your space, which is great. So if you're like, oh no, I forgot scissors, they're right
Mhm.
there. You don't have to worry, and you don't have to take them on a plane. So that's also good to not
True.
take sharp objects onto a plane,
Very
which
good.
they do not like. So do you have some crafty challenges that you've kind of faced at all besides we always talk about kind of the crafty drought, but have you had any other crafty challenges that you've kind of faced that you're like, "Yes, I overcame that."
Um, well, those of you who follow me on Instagram may have seen me struggling with embossing folders this year in 2023. Um, yeah, I really wanted to do the inked embossing folder technique, and it was a somewhat comical day watching a lot of Jennifer McGuire videos, trying to get this inked embossing folder to work. At one point, the embossing folder broke because I just put it through my die cutting machine the wrong direction, which the best way, I should say, it's not the only way. The
Yeah,
best way is to put it with the folded seam going in first.
yeah.
And I had used the same folder so many times that it had warped. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll just put it through the other way and then maybe it'll straighten out. It did not.
That is
It
not what
broke.
occurred.
It broke. But so anyway, that was, I don't know when that was in the year. I think it was earlier in the year. And by the end of the year, I was able to do the inked embossing folder technique and it worked well and I got it to work. So, it was just one of those things that did not come like right away for me. I had to try it to kind of get a feel for it. So there are just techniques like that that are hard. Recently, I mean, I never had a hard time with heat embossing, but over the last year, I was like, wow, just these few little things have changed my heat embossing game. I do a lot of like little itty bitty stamped greetings on a dark cardstock. And so I like to have it in white or silver or gold or something. And I was never able to get like a really crisp look to it. And even using like an anti-static powder tool, it never looked quite right. And I realized this year I I wasn't able to get that anti-static powder off the dark surface easy. And so I was being quite conservative and like dainty with how much anti-static powder I was putting down. Well, I discovered the secret is to use a microfiber cloth to take off the anti-static powder after your embossing is complete, after it's cooled off, because that'll take all that powder off of like almost anything. And you can really scrub the cardstock and really get all that powder off. So now I just like liberally like douse the thing in anti-static powder. And then when I go to stamp my greeting, I just barely let it kiss the cardstock. Like don't press down because it might squish the stamp and then you don't get a nice clean image. Like just barely let it kiss. It doesn't need a whole lot. Put your embossing powder on, heat it up. It's going to look like trash because there's all that powder, all the anti-static powder. It's going to look terrible. It's going to look like you've like doused the entire baby with all the baby powder. But just like a baby, all that powder will come off. So then you just like scrub the cardstock with your microfiber cloth and it's like miracle. All the powder's gone and you're left with the most beautiful stamped greeting. I know I'm exaggerating and it sounds crazy, but it's just one of those things that's bugged me ever since I've been crafting, that I couldn't get just like a nice crisp greeting in embossing powder. It bugged me, but I've figured that out. I've conquered it this year. So,
And that's very exciting. And so,
Mhm.
see, you're going to save lots of other crafters from
I hope
having
so.
to face that because they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's miraculous. So,
Uh-huh.
see,
Or sometimes you've got an anti-static powder tool that just from the start, it just wants to like throw up powder all over your project. And you're like, what just happened? And you think it's broken. I'm like, honey, embrace it. Put all the powder on. Because others can't even get their powder tools to put anything out.
yes.
Like it's like stopped up or clogged. So yeah, anyway, lots of anti-static powder. I've embraced it. I love it now.
And those microfiber cloths, like those are the magic
Mhm.
because they do everything. They wash beautifully.
Mhm.
You just don't want to dry them with the dryer sheets. Just hang them to dry. Like
Mhm.
I even have a bin in my sink. I just throw them all in there. And it's generally very black toned because I love obsidian, but
Uh-huh.
it's very colorful water. Then you just wring them out, hang them up, and they're good to go. Like they're ready again. They're such a
Absolutely.
versatile, yeah. And they're not like that big of an investment out of the gate, but
Mm.
they cover so many of our multitude of sins, so to speak.
Mhm.
So, because
Yeah.
yeah, I would be afraid to emboss on dark cardstock because you got that halo. Like I called it the
Mhm.
halo because it was like,
Mhm.
no, it's like right around there, and
Like
no. So I always
ghosting.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
So we've solved the ghosting problem
Mhm.
now, which is very exciting. Now you have seen what's in the kit so far. Is there an extra that you're excited about in the kit?
You know what? Let me look this up because I wanna make
Yes,
sure I'm not
you're
confusing
picking
it
the
with
correct
previous
extra.
retreats.
Let me
Let
see.
me refer back to the email.
And yes, Audrey, you are correct. These are the little, people will say, why should I do the retreat? We have 6 phenomenal instructors, 12 hours, beautiful PDFs, gorgeous kit. But you also get to craft with each of the 6 instructors. You get to see their process. So, like, let's say Kristina has a pretzel that day and she gets pretzel dust on her card and she has to cover it. She will show you how to do that really quickly. How to cover up the pretzel. I picked pretzels because that's what Jennifer McGuire and Mike were eating. So I just took their pretzels and shared them with you. But lots of tips and tricks that you may not, as an instructor, think are really great. Like you're like, you don't think about it, but then as you're going through the process, all these amazing tips and tricks come out that really can be lifesavers some days.
Okay, what were you asking? The extras that are coming?
Yeah, the
Or
extras. So besides like the stamps and dies, we have some inks and we have the amazing A3 folding mat and
okay. All right, so I'm seeing there's gonna be some envelopes coming. Um, well, I remember in the last kit, like, there was a roll of adhesive that was included. I've been using that, like, a ton. Really good adhesives, some blending tools. Blending tools are always nice. Um, I'd probably go with a blending tool because, I mean, this kit in particular has some really great stencils for, like, creating a scene.
yeah,
So, I think having some really good blending tools are always good.
those are yeah. And I think and I like having all the different sizes as well. It's nice to have those ready to go as you're crafting along. What do you think your most used tool in your space is now? I know it kind of changes as life changes, but
Hmm, most used tool. I'm trying to think of stuff that I use every time I'm making a card. Um, tweezers?
that's a good one.
Tweezers are good.
Yeah.
I also really love a good T-square ruler.
Yes.
Those are always really good. Um, I've been doing a lot of ink blending recently, so blending brushes are good.
Yeah.
Gosh, I use a lot of the same stuff over and over. Yeah, I'd probably go with tweezers
It's
because
nice to
I use them all the
yeah.
time.
Well, and the thing I've found with tweezers as well, you can put your kinda nook your arm up and put your sentiment, you can see it straight. When your
Mhm,
hand's on it, you don't really see the hole, and invariably, it always goes crooked, but with the tweezers, it
mhm,
seems to go straight, especially with the T-square, that
mhm.
you mentioned. That's another great one.
Yeah, 'cause your fingers, like, block everything. You can't, like, get all the way in there. So
Yeah.
tweezers are really good. Yeah.
Oh, cloud's not close. Kathleen, yes, I'm the same. I have to feel the microfiber cloth
Mhm,
before I purchase it. That's something I can't buy online. I like to feel the microfiber because some
mhm.
are rougher than others. I
Yeah, and they
just
almost, like, stick to your hands. I've
yes.
also noticed that it'll stick to my hands if my hands are really dry. So
Yeah.
sometimes if I don't like that feeling, put some lotion on, and then I can handle the microfiber cloth better, and it's not so, like, ugh, you know?
That's another really good tip.
Mhm.
And how do you get ready for deadlines? Are you somebody that works way ahead? You're really good? Or do you feel more creative as the deadline looms?
Um, procrastination is a really good motivator.
Yes, it is.
Um, no, I mean, okay, so if I let's say let's think of it as a clock. I'm not leaving it till the last hour, but I might leave it till the last 3 hours. So I'm usually not, like, doing stuff at the very, very last minute, but I will think about things for quite some time. Like, a lot of times, like, I'll just be sitting on the couch, and I'm just sitting there. Maybe I'm on my phone, and my husband will come through, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, technically, I'm just sitting here, but I'm actually thinking what I'm gonna do for later." So, there's a lot of thinking, and then there's doing in the last, like, 25% of whatever the time is given.
I like the percolating phase. It can be
Mhm,
a while, but it's a solid phase that you have to really
mhm,
embrace, the percolating phase, and I like that where, well, it looks like I'm doing nothing, but
mhm.
I'm working really hard in here.
I'm really hard.
What's your favorite non-way to kinda have some mindfulness and some downtime away from everything for you?
My favorite way to do that. Gosh, that's a really good question, and this is telling me, like, okay, I've gotta think of some more ways to reduce stress and all that. Um, I get well, this is probably something I need to do. I can't say that I do it already, but I think having, like, specific time set aside to do that, I think is good. Like, maybe having, like, a set routine, like, right when you get up in the morning or before going to bed. Like, having something like that time set aside specifically for that thing, Um, so maybe, having like not even that long, maybe just like 5 minutes to just, you know, turn off my phone, turn off anything that would be distracting and just sit in some silence. I don't think we do that enough. Like as this like everyday modern society, I don't think we do that. Just sit and be with ourselves enough. So I think that would probably be really good. And like I said, I don't currently do that. So this is like me like telling myself you should do this. But just set aside a few minutes, maybe at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day to just like sit and just be. And I think some people, when they get into like a really good meditation practice, that's what they do for that. That's their time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I have that. I try that in the morning. So in the
Mhm.
morning when I have my coffee, there's nothing else. There's no phone. There's no television. It's just sitting in the moment. Okay, what is going to happen? It's like I don't know if I call it bracing or mindfulness, but it's kind of
Mhm.
getting ready to get into the day and but taking that time to kind of set and step forward, then get ready and then go. So
Smart. I
now,
like
are
that.
you a more crafter in the morning or the evening?
Morning. I'm much more productive in the morning. I used to get up and work out, and then now I'm like, no, I am much more productive if I just get up and work, and then I'll work out in the afternoon. Um, I sometimes I will craft at night, but I find that like after a certain hour, my mind just turns off. I'm much more a morning person.
I find, especially with the daylight savings time thing going on, especially after like 3 p.m., like the creativeness is
Mhm.
just kind of not there. And
Mhm.
I mean, you have to have all the bright lights. I mean, I could land an airplane in here at this moment, but still, it's like it's so dark outside, and it's kind of
Uh-huh.
like, so that's a hard thing. Do you remember those days when that's kind of the time you had to craft and how you kind of got through that?
That's true. Because I wanna say, well, up until 2014, I'd have to just craft, outside of my full-time job. 2014 is when I sort of incorporated the crafting into my full-time job. So, I don't know how I did it back in the day. It was a lot of crafting at night, but I also would get up really early. Like, okay, back in the day back in the day, I would get up at 6 a.m. I would film, photograph, edit, and post a video by 8 a.m. That would be 2 hours.
Wow.
I had it down like a science because I was working full time and I had a 90-minute commute and I just had no spare time to do all this, but I had commitments because I was on design teams and things like that. So I would literally do everything within 2 hours. Now I'm like 2 hours, am I even done with the card yet? But also, like, the way I make cards has changed over the years, like, I think it's much more involved now. It was much more simplified back then.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like, I mean, I would craft at night a lot, but really early morning was where it was at for me.
And it makes sense. You're fresh, your brain has been resting, for a period
Mhm.
of time, so it's ready to bring out the creativeness and all of that. Brenna said, "Yes, silence is golden for sure. The silence, I enjoy it when it's raining in the night and I take a walk." Those are
Mhm.
some good silences as well. Well, thank you so much, Kristina, for joining us, and we'll be creating with you live before you know it, which is very
Yes.
exciting. And thank you to our amazing folks for coming in and having a chat with us and letting us know what is in your crafty to go bag as well. We always love it when you guys pop in some comments as well. And don't forget to check out Kristina's amazing chart that it helps us with your watercolors immensely. It's an amazing, it's very soothing to watch. If you need some mindfulness, just watching Kristina do that is very mindful.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much. And we will see you very, very soon. And to all of our crafty friends out there, thank you so much for allowing Alt New to help you craft your life. And thank you again, Kristina. Bye,
Thanks for
everyone.
having me. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Bye.